Welcome back to the Sports Authority. First Sunday without football for a while, but we're here with Local12.com digital editor and columnist Richard Skinner. I guess you could count Thomas More in Mount St. Joe. Thomas More already 1-0 on the season.
Back in swing.
Down in Tennessee getting the win. But do want to start with the Bearcats and Xavier. Both had games. UC had 2 games this weekend, and they've now got a 4-game winning streak coming out of a 25-day layoff with wins over Temple and now UCF in 2 wins in 3 days, and 2 grind them out, hang on by the skin of your white knuckle and skin of your teeth, whatever you want to say, but they're getting it done.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're by a combined 8 or 9 points. It didn't been by much, those 4 wins, right. But it feels like they get games where they're down 7, rally to win. They're up 7, let the other team hang around and come back, and I think this is good for them. I mean, this was a team that needed wins, A, and they're finding different ways to win games, B. I still don't think it's a team that's good enough to get to the conference tournament and make a run and get by Houston, but maybe it is. Maybe this is just all confidence building for them. I know it's confidence building for how things will finish this year going into next year. This could have ended in just a recipe for disaster if they'd have lost a handful of these games, and you look up and you're 4-9, and right or wrong, even though it's only the second year for John Brandon, is he the right guy? Those questions creep in. Now suddenly, it's amazing how some close wins, you may not have even thought you played very well to win those games, but just the fact you got those in the left-hand column, you look up, they're 4th or 5th in the league now at this point. If they're down by the bottom, which if we're going to have a conference tournament, seeding is important, and they're fighting their way into a decent seed line. Yeah.
Coach Brandon, after the game today, is sort of talking about how sometimes Chris Vogt has a good game. Sometimes it's Keith Williams. David DeJulius has emerged. Tari Eason had a big bucket at the end of the Tulane game. And then
Madsen made plays at the end of today.
Madsen made plays. But he did make the comment today that down the stretch, he didn't like the energy that his bench had, that maybe some guys are upset that they weren't getting a little more run than some other ones. Is that maybe more of a byproduct of such a long layoff and you don't get to sort of figure out where you are in the pecking order?
Yeah, and that's probably fair. And listen, there's no, other than Keith Williams, there's probably no clear-cut guy, right? And I think I coach that where I coach. I've got a couple of guys who are clear-cut, and then I got like guys 3 through 10 are kind of interchangeable, where no one has stepped up and yet no one has completely stepped back, and then you're always trying to find different combinations. And that's the thing. I have an AAU friend of mine that coaches, and at one point he sent 10 guys out to start a game, and he got technical fouls for the 5 extra. And I said, why did you do that? He said, because I wanted to tell their parents, I can't play them all. And I mean, I think sometimes players get that mix. And I get some of it's competitive too. You think you're the one that's going to go help, right? You think you're the one that's going to make the difference, where sometimes it's just not your time. And that's sometimes hard, to find the pecking order. I mean, the last few years, you knew the man was Jaron Cumberland. You knew before that, to some degree, the man was Gary Clark. You knew who the guy was. And so there still isn't that guy on this team. At times it is Keith Williams. At times Keith Williams makes some just god-awful turnovers. At times it is David DeJulius. At times it's not.
Jeremiah Davenport,
right, but he missed a few blockouts today and some big defensive rebounds that he gave up. And honestly, as a coach, if I can't trust you to at least block out, can't play you down the stretch, man. I can't do it. So I get it. I get the players maybe feeling that way, but you got to shake that stuff off.
Okay. So UC plays 2 games in 3 days. Xavier on Saturday, only their second game in a month's time. They end up losing to UConn, the first game against UConn as a Big East opponent for Xavier, 80-72. Really got out to a fast start. It looked like UConn couldn't throw it in the ocean.
Yeah, and then without book night and all those things, right? And it felt like, okay, this is going to be a good win. And then?
And Zach Fremantle almost said, we can't just play the first 5 minutes and put it on cruise control. And that's maybe, that kind of surprised me that he would even think that. But it just looked like a team that just didn't sort of put things away when they very easily could have.
Yeah, and that might be the product of not playing in so many days. It's so funny. I've been trying to get so many reads on these teams just
it's impossible.
Like today, Michigan, they came out, played an awful first half against Wisconsin. You're like, okay, yeah, I get that.
They had a 25-day layoff
you're
or
about to get boat race because you haven't, and they come back the second half and win a big game on the road against Wisconsin. Xavier, the first game back against Butler, kind of sluggish for a bit, and then end up winning pretty comfortably. And so it's been so weird to try to get a read on these teams coming back from all of this stuff. And so I continue to give a lot of them a pass. If you're not playing consistent games and practicing consistently, I don't know how you gauge any of this stuff. And I don't know how, I know the committee came out with the reveal on Saturday for the top 16. I get some of it. I know you do too, but some of it is like, I can't gauge. How do you gauge?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought Ohio State, they were the fourth one seed.
They probably have earned it. I don't know if they're if
9 quad one wins.
Right,
I mean, that's, it's hard to shake a stick at there. Talking to Travis Steele today, we saw a portion of the interview earlier in the show, and there is now really a question. It looks like each conference is going to have to determine by February 26th whether or not the automatic qualifier is going to come from a conference tournament or it's going to come from the regular season. So basically, conferences have to decide if they're going to hold a conference tournament, and they've got a couple weeks to do that. Xavier, really any sort of bracketology you have on them, they're a 7 or 8 seed.
Right.
Is there a point for them to play in the Big East tournament if they continue to trend towards the NCAA tournament?
I still think there is, just because you want to keep playing games. That's the other part. Yeah, I think that's an important week for a lot of teams to get some level of momentum going, consistency going, games played going, getting into normalcy going. I would hate to finish my regular season whatever date, March 5th, March 6th, whatever. Then go another full 10 days before you would play an NCAA tournament game without playing. I don't want to do that. I want to play something in between. I want my kids to play for something. I want them to strive for a title. And I think that date you mentioned is because a lot of the not a lot, but a chunk of the smaller conference tournaments are slated to start then, and they're the ones that kind of have to make the decision. I think when all said and done, there is enough TV money for the bigger conferences. I think there is the chance to get the Michigan States and the Kentuckys and the Dukes and the Carolinas one more swing at it. And I think there's an interest level there to see if they can, not just from those fan bases, but they're all hated for the most part, so you want to maybe root against. I think you'll see the major conferences wind up having tournaments. The smaller ones are the ones, to me, that are the most interesting because those are a lot of one-bid leagues, and a lot of it is, okay, let's just go ahead and reward our league champion, but the beauty of those have always been those are where the fun stories come out of a lot of times. So I do think it's going to be a tough call for each conference. The problem for those, though, is there's not a lot of TV dollars. You maybe get the championship game on ESPN, maybe your semis, if you're lucky, on ESPNU or something along those lines. But yeah, I think the NKU leagues, the Horizons and those have tough calls to make.
Do you get the sense that, and I know this is your opinion, do you get the sense that Xavier would have the option to opt out if they so choose?
That is a question on the podcast for Rick Broering of MusketeerReport.com. So to tease the podcast, you can go to our college basketball podcast with Chad Brendel of Bearcat Journal and Rick. That's certainly a question for him because he's been kind of in the touch with some of that. But my opinion of it is, I just think it's best for them to keep playing. And that to me, I would not, unless I'm down 3-4 guys. And at that point, you really may not have the decision maybe made for you anyway. But if not, I think I keep playing because I just don't think – I think you get to the conference tournament, and this has been noted before, you really don't help or hurt yourself a ton other than if you're desperate to play your way in. That's the desperation level. Or maybe you were a bubble team and you got your 3 or 4 wins to get you in, as an 11 seed, one of the last seeds. I think for Xavier, unless they just tank in their schedule, I don't think it's going to allow them to tank down the stretch. Unless they completely tanked, they're comfortably in. I think it's just a matter of where their seed line goes.
Okay. Some interesting developments at Paul Brown Stadium this week. It looked as if there were some images that signified a potential of a Ring of Honor, something that this fan base has been clamoring for ages. Your colleague on the writing side of things, Jay Morrison, said that any sort of signage that was up has been taken down.
Right.
What do you make of the whole thing? Do you think that was the Bengals tipping their hand a bit? Do you think we're going to see that?
It's a great question. I mean, I reached out 2 days in a row for at least some level of comment one way or the other, and I got stoned, which was really surprising to a large degree. So I don't know if that was them going, whoops, we messed this up and tipped our hand, or it was, whoops, we just wanted to kind of see what it looked like. And honestly, maybe want to see what it looked like to let Mike Brown see what it looked like and how cool maybe that could be, and maybe a way to talk him into it.
Yeah.
Because he's been the one that's balked at it. And as recently as 2 years ago, if I remember right, because we didn't have a Bengals luncheon this past year, but 2 years ago, we asked him about it, and he sounded like he was softening a little, but wasn't definitive about doing it, but said he understands why people want it. He'd be willing to listen to it, and maybe this was after the Ken Riley snafu over last weekend where the NFL they ignored his name, and we talked about it a little bit last week.
Wasn't included in the
almost forgot about his
yeah.
passing, right? Of maybe some of the people around Mike Brown went, listen, we just had one that passed that would be up here. How cool is this going to look? Let's show him what this maybe will look like, and he can see the visual of it and understand. Hey, this really doesn't hurt. Why is this so hard?
But his hang-up, though, is that he doesn't want to not include some people. He doesn't want to hurt feelings. Is that the hang-up?
All he keeps saying is, I don't want to trade on nostalgia, and I don't know what that means. Does he think that we're trying to I don't understand why we don't want to look back at times. I think some of the great parts of sports is the history of sports, no matter what. I mean, any baseball fan is a fan of stats and history and past records. That's what makes it so appealing. Football's different in that regard. We don't know a lot of the stats that we do about baseball at the top of our heads, but I just don't know why it's so hard. And set a number. And you are going to leave a couple of people out the first go-round. If you limit it to 5, you're going to leave a lot out. If you limit it to 10, you're going to leave a handful out. Okay, but that doesn't mean as we move on years to years to years, you don't eventually catch up and include just about everybody. And as more guys retire, whether it's a 3-year moratorium, 5-year moratorium before they're allowed inclusion, then it takes care of itself eventually over time. But honestly, if you saw what we saw, what looked so hard about it? Did that look like it was hard?
Yeah.
I mean, no. And the fan base wants it. You're not spending ultra millions of dollars to do it. And it's not like you're putting a placard up with the years of service. It's awesome. And then when a national TV game comes in, you can look and go, Ken Anderson, man, you know what? He should maybe be talked about for the Hall of Fame a little bit. Ken Riley. I just don't want 3 or because here's the thing, and I know I'm off on a tangent here. Ken Riley's already passed. Yeah. Paul Brown obviously would be included. He's passed, but that's.
Sure.
Okay.
I was going to ask you for your first 5.
Well, those are 2. And then do we include the Super Bowl coaches? Forrest Gregg passed. Sam Weiss has passed. Ken Anderson's getting up there. Bob Johnson, the original Bengal. Munoz certainly definitively has to be in that mix.
Bob Trumpy's getting older.
I mean, there's a lot of these guys. Just let's do it while we can and not look up and go, hey, our first 10 in the Ring of Honor are all dead. Let's welcome their grandchildren. No, let them enjoy the moment.
Okay. I had some Reds questions.
Okay.
I feel like that might be a good place to end.
We've
got some time.
We got more next week.
We can wait to talk about Sean Doolittle. We'll talk about him a little later in the show.
He's not part of the Ring of Honor.
Skinny's a little fired up. He's going to be able to drive home safely on the roads because his car will be on fire.
Yes.
Local12.com.
I'll burn all the snow off.
Digital editor and columnist Richard Skinner. You can see all of his work on our website.
Just do it!
That Skinny podcast on Local12.com. Skinny, thanks so much.
You bet, Jed.
We'll be right back.